Hi, my name is TJ. My dad died of overdose on January 1st, 2011, and my mom is a recovering addict. God helped my mom, and now together we are here to help you. Now let's talk recovery. Here's your host, my mom, Susan Sexton-Wood.
Hi, and welcome to Let's Talk Recovery. I am your host, Susan Sexton-Wood. Today our guest is Jessica Lacy. She is a recovering addict that has been saved by grace. Hey Jessica.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. We're going to first ask you to share your testimony.
Well, you said that my name's Jessica. I'm 23 years old. I'm from Rushville, Indiana. I was born to two parents. They were both addicts. My dad was a heroin addict, and my mom, she was a prescription pill addict. My dad died when I was 6 of a heroin overdose. My mom, she died when I was 19. She had medical conditions. She had kidney failure, so she was on dialysis for 19 years. And I can remember being little and just knowing that my mom wasn't going to live for very long. She died when she was 38. I was 19, and I can't even describe what kind of pain that was. It was like the light was just sucked out of my soul, and I can remember coming home from work and her body was still there. And when I was little, my favorite memory of my mom was she would rock me in the chair. Well, she was still in that same chair, and I just remember sitting down with her and rocking and being so mad at everyone in the room because their lives were going to be fine in a week, and I just knew that nothing about me was ever going to be the same. And growing up, I knew that doing drugs was acceptable because I watched my parents do it. I started smoking cigarettes when I was 15, and then I started drinking. I had my first drink of alcohol when I was 13 with my mom, and that progressed into weed and Adderall. I had a pretty bad Adderall problem when I was in high school, and when my mom died, it's just it all skyrocketed. I couldn't get high off the Adderall anymore. It wasn't working for me. And at the time, I was working at a nursing home, and one of the girls that I worked with introduced me to meth. And I was 18 when I first tried meth, and for the next 4 years of my life, that's all I did. I can't remember one day not being high. And when my mom died, that all of my responsibility basically went out the window, all my accountability, all of my support. And then my grandma died when I was 21, and my grandma was the matriarch of our family because my mom was sick my whole life, so she took care of all of us. She was the glue that held the whole family together. And when she died, I think that was almost harder than my mom or any loss I had before that, because it was the last person that had a hand in raising me. And I got pregnant 3 months after that. And when I had the baby, I stopped using. When I was pregnant, I stopped using, and when I had him, that's the only time I can remember really feeling happy in my life. But like all things, it was temporary. He might have been 6 months old, and I started using again. I thought that he was gonna fill this void and I was gonna have this sense of having a family, and that everything was just gonna be perfect. Well, his dad and I stopped getting along. We stopped talking to each other. We wouldn't even sit next to each other, and we continued to use weed and alcohol. And then I don't know what it was in me, but something missed getting high on speed, and I had talked him into buying some meth, and we used that night, and we didn't stop. And we started arguing all the time. Sometimes we would get physical with each other. We would throw things, and he would change the locks about every other week. Well, I don't really know what a good word is for it. I started sleeping around with other men, and I got pregnant. And I can remember finding out that I was pregnant and crying because Rylan wasn't even walking yet. Like, I didn't know what to do, because in the back of my mind, I'm questioning, is this even his baby? And I mean, we can't bring a baby into this. We're using every day. Like, it's sad enough that our son has to go through this. Well, we ended up breaking up, and he kicked me out, and I didn't have anywhere to go. And for a good month and a half, I lived in my van. I didn't have heat in the car, and I would bounce around from places parking it. And the whole time I had the baby, like, he wouldn't even let my son stay there. And I was 7 months pregnant with my daughter, and I can just remember, like, being in the car, crying, thinking that there was no way I was going to make it out of this. That I basically had accepted that this is how I was going to die, and this is how my children were going to live. And I don't know if I'd ever felt more helpless in my life. I couldn't provide for myself, and I couldn't provide for my son. So I let my son go back and live with him. And I got a trailer for a little bit. I didn't have much in it. I didn't have a stove, I didn't have a refrigerator, and I had a little space heater. And the whole time that I was pregnant with my daughter, I was using. And I never went to a doctor's appointment. I never went to a checkup, because I knew that when you're pregnant, they drug test you. And I knew that if I tested dirty for meth, that they would come and get my son, and that she would be removed from me when she was born. I couldn't bring myself to get an abortion or put her up for adoption. I didn't have any, like, emotional attachment to her, but at the same time, I couldn't, you know what I mean? I felt like I couldn't kill her, but with the, you know what I mean, if the drugs didn't do it, you know what I mean, I couldn't go and have it done. But my water broke, and I'm freaking out. I don't know how far along I am. I don't know if, like, this is the time the baby's supposed to come, or if something's really, really wrong. So I went to the hospital, and they did an ultrasound, and they told me that she was coming 6 weeks early. And up until this point, I didn't even know that she was a girl. I had kept referring to her as a girl, so ironically she turned out to be a girl. But when I had her and I saw her, like, when I put a face with the baby that I had been carrying, she was so beautiful, and she was so perfect. And nothing was wrong with her. She didn't have any health problems. She wasn't like a crazy sea monkey like I thought she was going to be. Mm-hmm. But when I saw her face, I knew that I could never hurt her again. Yeah. I named her after my mom, and something in me, like I didn't have any emotional attachment to her before, but something in me knew that I was going to turn my entire life around for this one little girl. And she tested positive for methamphetamines. and she was in the NICU. She only weighed 4 pounds, 5 ounces when she was born, and they had to weigh 5 pounds to go home. So she had to gain weight. Well, not long after she was born, there was a whole army of DCS workers in my room, and I wasn't upset. I wasn't mad that they were there. It was like a flood of relief had come over me because finally the secret was out. Finally I could tell someone what I had been doing all this time, and I could really ask somebody for help. 8 days later, DCS removed her and they put her in a foster home. And I went home, and I got to keep my son for 2 weeks until they came for him. And I remember when the caseworker, she knocked on my door, she told me to pack a bag for him. They were taking him. And I'm getting some of his things together, and I can't even see straight. I'm crying so hard, but the whole time I felt like I had asked for it, and I felt like there was no way that I was going to get them back. I felt like this is what I deserved because I asked for it, right? Well, she took him that day, and they put him in the same foster home as his sister. And I can remember closing the door and sliding down the door onto the floor, and I'm crying. And that was the first time I had ever prayed. I had ever prayed to God. In my prayer, I said, either kill me or get me through it. And sometimes you have to be careful what you pray for. Because 2 weeks later, I ended up in jail. And I did about 6 months. It was the third time I went to jail. I'm a 3-time convicted felon. And while I was in jail, I really dried out and got my head clear. And I was really face to face with all the consequences of what I'd been doing for the last 4 years and everything I had put my family through. And there was a man by the name of George Huff. He's a pastor, and he would come on Wednesdays and he would preach through the door slot. And this particular Wednesday, he had preached on the woman that cleans Jesus' feet with her tears and her hair, and pours the oil on his feet. And the way he preached that made me feel like if Jesus could accept this woman and love this woman could be redeemed, and then I could too. Well, he led me to the Lord that day, and I got saved that day. And 2 weeks later, I got baptized in a horse trough at the Rush County Jail. And if you're a Christian, the feeling when you come up out of that water, somehow I knew that my whole life was changed. My whole life started when I came up out of that water. And I joke all the time and I say that I don't know if it was because the water was cold or if it was the Holy Spirit, but it was the Holy Spirit. But so when I was in jail, they gave me a plea deal that if I went to treatment, then they would take some of the jail time away from me, but I would sign longer on probation. So I ended up going to a 28-day program in Richmond, Meridian, ARC, and I completed that program, but while I was there, ironically, a woman by the name of Brandy had told me about Crossroads. She told me that she thought it would be a good fit for me and that she could tell that I wanted long-term sobriety. And there was another sober living house that I was going to go to, but they had gave my bed away. So I was freaking out. Like, I thought that if I went back home, like, for sure I was going to relapse and everything I just went through was for nothing. But we went into her office and we called Wendy, and Wendy picked up the phone. Wendy, this is Crossroads. And we did my phone assessment, and at the end of the conversation she says, okay, I'll be there January 19th to pick you up. Well, so when I got to Crossroad, I thought that I was really leery if this would help me or not, because I had tried to get sober one time before, and I only made it for 5 months. And like, the devil just, he was really working on me. Like, he made me believe that it was all temporary, that I was only doing good for a little bit, that inevitably I would fail, and all of these people that were supporting me, I would let down. And one thing that showed me about relapsing with the support system that I have, when I went to jail, they had no idea that I was even thinking about doing anything bad. And they still continued to love me through it. And it took all of the pressure off. It made me feel like I wasn't doing it for them, that I was doing it for me. So when I got to Crossroad, I really dealt with the grief and the loss of my parents. And I really forgave my mom for signing herself off treatments. Because my mom may still be alive if she didn't do that, but I don't know what her quality of life was. She wasn't walking. She had to do dialysis treatments 3 times a week. She was depressed. By the time she died, her liver was failing, her heart was going, she was going deaf. But I just couldn't accept that she willingly left me. And once I forgave her for that, and I forgave my dad for his heroin addiction and his overdose, that there went my crutch, there went my reason to hurt myself. And now I don't even take antidepressants, and that's all glory to God. Mm-hmm. I really got into the Word, and I surrendered. I got outside of myself, and I found something worth living for. And I feel free now. I don't feel like I don't have a desire to use anymore. Jesus delivered me from that. Mm-hmm. And it feels good. But I graduated my 4-month program, and I stayed at Crossroad for the Victory program. I've been at Crossroad for almost 10 months now. I have a full-time job, like, that is big for an addict. Like, I've never missed a day of work. Like, I've never called in. Like, that's huge, I feel like.
It is.
And I joke all the time. I say that I have a 401k. Like, I'm, like, actually planning things for my future. I recently just bought a car. I got joint custody of my son. And my daughter, she lives with me at Crossroad now. And now what I'm working towards is helping other people. When I see what's worked for me, like, I'm just, like, dying to give it to someone else. And my sister, she is an addict too, and she is doing a 3-year sentence in prison. And now I've seen both sides of it. I've been the addict, and now I'm the person that loves an addict. And like you said before, it's so hard to try to help them when you know the answer.
Right.
Like, I just want to shake her sometimes, but I keep praying for her, and she's been going to church in there, and I just feel like God's really doing a work in her, and if anyone can do it, it's definitely not me, but
It's a God thing.
it is God.
So you keep in touch with her, you write her.
I call her on the phone too.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you're doing for your recovery to keep it moving forward and to strengthen it?
Well, I go to NA, AA, Brianna's Hope, CR, and church twice on Sunday. But I don't have idle time. I have absolutely no idle time. I don't have downtime, because then I get in my head and I start thinking. And if you have time to get in yourself, you're going to find a reason. You're going to find a reason why you're justified to get high. But I go to work all day. I come home and I take care of my daughter, and then I hit a meeting during the evening, and we're right back at home, which I live in a sober living house, so there's lots of recovery going on around me. And I think that's the biggest prayer that God has answered for me, because he dropped me in a place where there are so many recovering Christians in at my house, at work, at church. I work for a pastor and his wife that, ironically, he went through Shepherd's Way, so we can talk about Jesus at work. There are people at work that have Team Jesus shirts, and so anywhere I go, I don't have to feel embarrassed about who I am. I don't have to be embarrassed about being a Christian or being an addict or, just being me. And I don't think I've ever felt more comfortable in my own skin than I have when I moved to Richmond. Because back home, people kind of laugh at me and mock me for being a Christian and feeling as strongly as I do about, trying to live a sober Christian life. I've been called a judgmental holy roller. I'm like, that's so sad that you feel that way about about Christians. I'll pray for you, but
Gonna find judgment.
Well, anywhere, of course, yes.
Yeah.
But
we can't let that get to us.
Finally, I'm being judged for something good and not being strung out or something, so I'll take it. But
Right. So how long have you had custody of your daughter now?
5 months. And when I find housing, when I do finally move out of Crossroad, the judge is going to close my case. And the last time I went to court, he looked at me and he told me that he was proud of me. And my probation officer told me that she was proud of me. Finally I could go sit down and meet my probation officer and not get yelled at.
Right.
Yeah, it's nice.
It is nice when we kind of take how we used to be and how we are today. At least we can laugh about some things. There's a lot of emotion in recovery too. Laughing and crying.
Laughing and crying. Sometimes you do both at the same time. Yeah.
So if there's an addict that may be watching the show tonight, what could you say to help encourage them to get help?
Don't give up. There's a way out. All you have to do is raise your hand and ask for help. Just say, I'm done. And I think where I found like chain breaking or my relief is I finally got mad at the drug and not the person. Like, drugs makes me so mad, and it still can. Now that I'm sober, I'm 15 months sober. It still continues to take things away from me.
Yeah. And our past comes back to haunt us still. But that's one thing that I say too, get mad at the addiction and quit being mad at yourself.
Yeah.
Because us being mad at ourselves is just going to keep tearing us
Keep
down.
in the cycle.
So what about loved ones of addicts? If they're watching, what could you say to help them get through just loving their loved one that may be struggling, or how to reach out to them? What could you say to encourage them?
Just keep praying for them. Let them know that you love them no matter what. That's what I tell my sister all the time. I love you whether you're doing good or bad. I wish you'd do good. I would help you do good, but if you're going to do bad, I can't.
Right.
I have to love you from afar.
And that's where we have to protect our own recovery, is love from a distance if somebody's still struggling. Well, I'm going to read one of my poems, the more that when you're talking about an inpatient facility. This was actually written at Crossroad when I was there. You know, being around Crossroad for over 5 years now, and watching all of the people go through there, it's just amazing. Not only what I got, but what I see other people getting
That's
back
my
from
favorite
there.
part.
Yeah. But this is called One More Day. Missing home, am I ready to leave? Stay this way, can I just let it be? I push myself through just one more day, hoping my heart can mend itself, but I think God is the only way. Yearning for home, my palms start to sweat. A needle's not the answer. God, please help. Let's finish this journey He sent us to do. Become different people. We want this too. Family and friends may wait back home. If we leave, we are still really just on our own. And the reason I wrote that is, and you've probably seen this through the time you've been there, is within seconds, people may want to leave. Getting up in the morning, people want to leave, and they don't want to finish the program. But you get people that love every minute of being in the facility too. But there was a couple people when I was there that wanted to leave, and I wrote that poem because I wanted to encourage them to stay. And so it is about one more day. Sometimes it's minute by minute, sometimes it's seconds, you know. But the reason that I wrote poems, which started again at Crossroad, that's where I started writing all of them. Within 60 seconds, it can change someone. It can. I've seen it work to where, oh, I'm leaving, I'm just giving up, and
One conversation in the office with Wendy and you come out, all right, I'm staying.
yeah. And that's what it's about, you know, and encouragement, and to stay and to keep on fighting and not to give up. So we want to thank you for being on the show, and thank you for sharing your testimony with the people that are watching. If you are someone that may be struggling, we want to encourage you to get help and reach out to someone. You can give us a call. You can find us on Facebook. As Jessica said, you know, her life started changing when she gave her life to God. And so we want to encourage you to find that, to find the strength in Him when we don't have strength ourselves. And so we want to thank you for joining us on Let's Talk Recovery. Have a blessed night.